Absolutely. So AI is a science, just like math and neuroscience, psychology, artificial intelligence. It's right there. And it has the ability to mimic human thinking and perform tasks as a human would. So basically, it gives us an opportunity to do things that we otherwise would do, but it requires three things. It requires data, it requires the model, and it requires a place to put the output as far as once the task is done, what do you want to do with it? So basically, that's it.
Okay. And go back to that second part of my question then. What makes it so important for leaders at Humana right now? Because we have, it's embedded in our leader standard as part of that digital piece. Again, we're hearing about it daily, and we recognize that it's probably going to be, not probably, it's definitely going to be part of our competitive edge as an organization. So why do leaders need to embrace it?
Absolutely. So artificial intelligence is our table stakes for the future. It will be as ubiquitous as the internet itself. And the way we stay competitive is this technology. You asked about AI, then there's, what you hear a lot about is generative AI. Generative AI looks at the same data that's been accumulated for the past 41 years on the internet and using models or instructions, and it gives us information that hasn't existed before. We've been using like ChatGPT and Genesis and Gemini and Bard, and it gives us, we ask it a question and or ask for a picture, and it gives us that. Within Humana, we recognize that it gives us that opportunity to be competitive. Understand, as an organization, we want to be first, best, different, faster, cheaper, better. We want to be able to save time, save money, make money, relieve stress, make things easier, all the while delivering products and services that makes people feel safe and certain. The only way we do that is to have a technology that's tied to those parameters. Artificial intelligence is where we are.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that. I think as AI evolves and becomes better, it makes our jobs quicker and easier. We're aware of all of that. I think the concern that are on the minds of a lot of folks, particularly our leaders, is this thing going to make me obsolete? Is it going to start doing my job for me? So can you speak to that a little bit and allay some of those fears that folks might have?
Absolutely. So that's the fear. Will AI take my job? And understand that 1/4 of employees that have been surveyed fear it's going to take my repetitive or customer facing job. Leaders are no different. But here's the thing. As far as great leaders are concerned, there's always a need for the great leaders. So AI itself will not take the job of the great leaders, but you have to be adroit to change. You have to be able to be nimble. You have to be able to embrace what's happening going forward. We think about companies like Eastman Kodak. You think about Eastern Airlines, BlackBerry. We can go on. Those are companies that had great leaders, but they weren't able to change based on changing environments. So as far as it eliminating leaders, not necessarily, but the caveat is if you're not able to change with this technology, then what's going to, it's not the AI technology that's going to take your job. Who's going to take your job is the other leader that's willing to learn AI. That's the person that's going to take your job.
It's a critical skill that you must learn, and if you don't individually, you don't have a competitive edge against those folks that do.
Exactly, Robin. And here's the thing: it's doable. There are things that leaders need. For example, the three things I always focus in on as a leader is having awareness, because AI doesn't have awareness, empathy, and then wisdom. If you have those three components in the context of what's happening, there's always that need. We have case studies, we'll get into it in just a little bit, where companies didn't use the human intervention to create the endeavor. So it shows, yes, we need leaders, we need humans, but you have to be able to change based on these changing environments.
Okay. I'm reminded too of what you're saying. Reminds me of that old computer adage of garbage in, garbage out. Like if you put garbage into AI, you're going to get garbage out. And so we need that human way to understand how to refine what we put into AI to get the best results out.
Yeah, exactly. So as I mentioned, with AI, you need data. And again, the data comes from the 41 years of the internet. And the data within AI is called a corpus. Corpus is a body of information. But with that information, you can't always trust it. Here's why. With the AI models collecting information, you can't trust it all because you have contributors like Reddit, and within Reddit, 64% of Reddit contributors are white males, but so that doesn't paint the whole picture. It's the same thing with Wikipedia. We love Wikipedia, but 87% of contributors are white male. It's nothing wrong with white males, but it's as far as we need a cross section of representation throughout. So if that's the data we're using, we want to use all data that's representing everyone. So that's, again, the human intervention. And what you'll see, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, is something called explainable AI. And explainable AI is, okay, I'm working with you, you're giving me information. I want to know, how did you come up with that information? That is the big get coming up in the next couple of, I would say, years, but things move so fast, it could be next week. But explainable AI is something that's really important moving forward.
Okay, talk more about that explainable AI. Like, what does it mean for us as leaders as we're interacting with this? And we're going to get into some practical actions too, but if you can kind of lay that groundwork a little bit for us.
I'll give some context here. Let's say, for example, you're purchasing a home, and obviously you need a home loan unless you're paying for cash. So you go to the bank and you have good credit, and you have a good history of payments, things of that nature. And you go and you lay out, you have a job, and you lay out your wares, and this is where you are. And the lender comes back and says, you're not approved. Well, why not? Obviously, you want to know why, because it doesn't make any sense logically. The same thing with AI. If it's coming back with information that that we're not comfortable with or doesn't sound right, that's where the wisdom comes in. We have to be able to answer those questions. So explainable AI is the ability to look inside of a model to see the rationalization besides what happened. Now, here's the thing about that. We'll use ChatGPT for an example. ChatGPT uses 175 billion parameters to give us the information that we ask for. So who's going to go through 175 billion parameters? So part of it is going to be invisible. What we want to get into is the rationalization behind the decisions. We've used Siri, we've used Alexa, we've used anti-lock brakes, autocorrect, we've used Google Translate. All of those applications have AI on the back end. We really appreciate the output, but really, how does it work? Do we care? We care when it starts giving us information that we don't like. That's why the efforts will be, as far as leadership is concerned, especially in the IT space, is to make sure that the data that we're using is not biased to a particular segment. We're going to have a measure of that for a while because we're still new, but that is what we're looking for and looking at as far as bias is concerned.
Very interesting. Can we use AI to mitigate bias, or do we have to do that as humans?
Good question. So you go back to the question, well, who owns the data? Who owns, who gets the credit? If you use ChatGPT, I'm answering your question in this way, Robin. Let's say if you ask ChatGPT to create a dissertation, it's award-winning. It's a Pulitzer. Do you get the award because ChatGPT wrote it for you? Well, who owns it? That's a question that's up for debate, because you have this original idea and then it's generated by some model. And the answer there is we have to verify and check. Now, what AI can do is it recognizes itself. So if you write an article or a book and say, I wrote it, there's another model that says, no, you didn't, and here's why. So be careful on that. So to answer your question, we do have the mechanisms to check ourselves. And again, that comes into play of being careful, and that's where the human intervention comes in. We can never just let it go on where no one's minding the store. It'll always be something that humans will be needed. You need HI, human intelligence, for AI, artificial intelligence, to work.
So we're not going to be at like the Terminator movies anytime soon.
No Minority
Report. We're still going to be humans.
Right. No Minority Report or Terminator or Centennial Man, not yet.
Okay, good to know. I'm glad to hear it. These must be your favorite movies, being an AI guru.
There you go. There you go.
or else you hate them. I don't know which.
They're fun.
Let's talk practical, because I think, like, we have a wide variety of leaders from a lot of different areas on this call. We're not, all specialized in one area, so there might be a wide variety of applications. So let's talk about some of the things that kind of just about any leader could do to start using AI. And I'll start off, if you don't mind, as an example, because one of the things that I figured out is one thing that I do a lot in my job is leaders will come to me and say, I'm doing an on-site, budgets are starting to loosen up occasionally, and people are able to fly their people in or do on-sites. And so can you like help me with half the day doing team building and that kind of thing? And I recognize, like, I've got a lot of resources, a lot of background and experience, but I don't know everything. And so one of the things that I've started doing is when I sit down with that leader and talk about what do you need? What is it that you want to solve for? What are the outcomes that you want from that half day team building? And we'll talk about those things, and I'll take them back and I'll go to ChatGPT and say, design me a workshop based on what this leader and I talked about. And I get it back, and I don't just like take that and then just run with it automatically. But what I do find is that it helps me fill in the gaps of the things that I don't already know. And so it enhances what I'm working on and helps kind of give me a structure and a way to think about those workshops, for example. That's one thing that I've found to be able to use for it. And just experimenting, just playing around with it, has been really handy for me. So I'll hand it back to you, but I wanted to start with that.
That's a great example. So in regards to, I'm going to start with the challenge, and then I'm going to go with use cases. So as far as the challenge is concerned, when it comes to leadership is concerned, the one thing that we want to recognize is that we have good data, and you'll hear me say that over and over again. And as you said, data in, good data in, bad data out, or so on. So good data is number one. Humana, we're doing a lot in regards to recognizing our data, and also augmenting data that's out in the ether. Also, security is a big issue too, because we are asking AI, and those engines are outside of our walls. As we open ourselves up, cybersecurity is very important. So we have to be really adroit as far as what does that mean for our organization. I mentioned explainable AI answers as well. That's a big. But as far as good use cases, we've collected a number of use cases, especially here in 2024, in the efforts to save $1 billion, which is very doable. I had a conversation just earlier today. Is that possible? Absolutely. But in regards to use cases, it's not just a matter of scrambling around. Okay, Becky, what do you do? Michael, what do you do? Is that, does that work? There is a list of questions and parameters we could use to see, okay, this is a good candidate for artificial intelligence. So I would say that's a good way to look at anything that's repetitive, anything that's analytics, customer care as well. Understand that at this point for Fortune 500s, 80% of Fortune 500 companies are looking for hyper automation. Hyper automation is anything that can be deemed as something that helps them either to save time, save money, make money, and at the same time decrease costs and waste. So in a broad stroke, I would say look at some of those. And as you look around again, there are a list of questions you can ask. I can provide that in regards to, is this a good case, a good candidate for artificial intelligence?
Love it. That's great. Let's stick with this challenges theme, because I want to go back to, as we were starting the call, I asked people to put in the chat, and I'm going to skip back here a little bit and just bring some of these out. I haven't had a chance to look at any of them as we've been talking, but I just want to pull them forward if you don't mind hitting a few of these.
That's fine.
Okay, so some of the challenges that you all mentioned, Michael said, how can I utilize digital and AI to improve our processes? I think we're going to get to that with the practical applications in just a moment. Thanks for that, Michael. Mm-hmm. Liz says helping associates anxiety over job loss. Yeah, we've talked about that one. Liz, jump on back in if we haven't answered that adequately, and if you can, this is a little bit like we're your AI or Wade is your AI, like refine the question a little bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm in the health services over on the insurance side, and we currently use natural language processing to help with chart analysis, and to also use fax attachments. Neither one of the second one requires no person other than a quick cross check, and the first one has increased productivity about 15%, which doing the math means I need 85 instead of 100. So, I think that's really the challenge. Leadership wise, the concept is a no-brainer. Yeah, you either, I don't choose to become a dinosaur this late in my career. But it is along with how do we have our frontline people understand what are the skills they have to be successful for another 10, 20, 30 years. As they're on the uphill swing of their career, and a number of them are what we would consider entry-level jobs or frontline jobs. So how do we keep them successful in this transition, which is inevitable? So that's kind of where I was going, is how to help them keep their enthusiasm and their energy while they're still looking for how do I keep my career options open.
That's a
That's what I was
fantastic,
going, Robin.
that's a great
And
question.
again, pardon me for the white male comment, but really, Wade just leaned into that, and I thought, I am gonna take a bite at that hook.
100%.
I didn't hear what you said, but I appreciate it, Liz.
I just said it's not bad, it's white male is pretty good as long as you are one.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So listen, to your question, that is a fantastic question. And I feel that represents a lot of sentiment across the board as far as the workforce is concerned, the future of the workplace. So keep this in mind. We want to encourage everyone to start with AI 101. And then it's not, again, to me, it's not rocket science. I mean, this is what I do, but really for what the functionality of what it can do as far as improving your job, encourage education, encourage life learning. It's like anything else. We were at horse and buggy for a long time, but then when the car industry came out, it eliminated that industry, but it created more jobs. So if you want to stay employed and viable, it's important to level up, we have so many great resources. In fact, after this session is over, we'll provide several resources, even one within Humana, that you can take courses on AI 101. And that will give you the crux that you need to be at least adroit as far as how to level up. So that's great. The second thing is, when it comes to the mindset of encouragement, take it like this. Because artificial intelligence feels like I don't have a reference point, think about, most of us have children, or they're grown or whatever now. When it's time for them to learn how to tie their shoes, and we show them, they have no reference point on how to tie their shoes. So we ask the question, do you need time or do you need help? And when you think about it as leaders, that's the thing. Do you just need some time to, get your head around this, or do you need some help? We have both. So with that being said, we want everyone to succeed. Number one, provide resources that are available, because it's plenty. And number two, give the time and the help needed, and that pushes forward. Thirdly, and very important, as we have a growth mindset, understand, in order to stay relevant and continue to pay your bills and feed your kids, you have to work, and this is the way it is.
Stay adaptable. It's going to disrupt. Stay adaptable. But can you all see why Wade Younger is my new BFF here? Like, that answer, I'm just like, I'm so down with. So thank you for that. We've got some others, challenges, not knowing enough about it, or how it will apply to my role. We're getting into that, keeping up with all the new info. Phil says the ability for it to be compromised. So I don't know if you can tackle that in a quick minute.
Yeah, so I'm working on a paper right now to talk about the vulnerability of ChatGPT, specifically because I use others, but within an organization, because right now we use Stride, and that Stride is great. I've got a chance to play with it a bit, but the hesitancy of organizations like ours to bring it inside is it opens us up to cyber attacks, and they're very real, and it's happening all the time. So the other consideration we want to keep in mind is, just like it's just as important to understand prompt engineering, which I'll get into in just a second, it's just as important for people to understand what is cyber attacks will look like, what will CAN spam look like, because phishing now looks so real, you don't even know if it's internal or external. So that, as far as security training, is just as important as prompt engineering. So the question is, it's an active effort that needs to continue to move forward, because we'll always have bad players. It's here.
All right, let's get into some other practical things, and I'm going to share my screen again. We always provide you guys with a screen in our interviews. Are you ready to go through this one, Wade?
Yeah, go ahead.
The-
Fine, that's great.
The practical application?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Because our time just seems to fly. Okay.
Yeah, it flies right by. I know.
Yeah. So a couple of things. As far as a leader is concerned, and understand again, the crux of this is there is a need for leadership. Companies that feel like AI will completely eliminate humans, those companies will be left behind. While I also say there will be two types of companies in business. I mean, in the future, those who are using AI, and then those who are out of business or hard to work with. So building this language and building this knowledge is important. The other thing is having a clear AI strategy. What is the AI strategy? Humana, fortunately, has a team of people that we've been, working on AI strategies for a while. Understand the why behind it, because the big thing is we want to solve a problem. We're either solving a problem or enhancing for customer care or doing things again, first, best, different, faster, cheaper, better. Understanding a clear process improvement is important. Now, I want to go into strategy a little bit because that's my expertise. Understand the ability to solve a problem is even more important than using AI. I'll say it again. The ability to solve a problem is more important than the ability to use AI. Case in point, let's say someone gave you a car, whether it's a Porsche, a Ferrari, Lamborghini, whatever. You have just
Please do.
yeah, exactly. You have that vehicle, but if you don't work on your driving skills, what benefit is it really? So here, analogous to that is we have this powerful tool in artificial intelligence that will give us some answers, but if we don't know how to solve the problem first, because it's about asking for some solutions, because it only gives us what we ask for. So in regards to being able to decompose problems, that is just as big to me than the AI solution. So that goes into strategy. Education, as I mentioned, is very important. Invest the time, invest the money into that. That's just, it reminds us back into we're in the early 2000s when we're getting into the internet more and more and more. Everybody had these .coms, but they didn't always work because you needed more than just an idea and a .com. You needed some strategy. So getting to some education is important. This is big for me, culture. In order for us to move forward, the reason why there's so much fear right now is because leadership aren't sure as far as what are we going to do, what's going to happen to my job, what's going to happen to my company, and that's for large enterprises, mid-size and small. But if we create a culture of innovation, which means there's no wrong answers, we're taking in all ideas and we're working together, you move forward. And we all know how to, make everyone feel good about what's happening. And that's all about two things: inclusion and feeling valued. And when it comes to going about creating that strategy and that inclusion and innovation, it's always about starting small. If you talk to any organization outside of ours, those successful projects were always small. And the reason why this is important, 70% of IT digital transformation projects fail, 70%. And the reason why is leadership, communication, over expectation. But if you start small, we get a chance to move forward. Always listening to your foot soldiers. What I mean, if Betsy knows how this works, we listen to Betsy because she's been doing it for 13 years. From a leadership perspective, we need that global view. But if we're listening to our individuals that are executing, we go further and further along. And then lastly, just keep an open mind. Learn and learn and learn. Most jobs that exist today didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. It'll be the same going forward. So if we have that continuous mindset, we'll continue to move forward. If you can go to the next slide, I can chime into that even more. So what we really want to do is we want to create an AI augmented leadership team. And what we mean by that is there are 3 areas that AI really can't mimic. again, awareness based on the temperament of what's going on, whether it's a political divide, whether it's a racial divide. I mean, all the stresses that are happening, that affects our employees, that it affects how we come to work. And then you have compassion, understanding that, hey, Larry has been coming to work every day. He has not taken a sick day in 7, 8 years. All of a sudden, Larry is sick for 2 weeks. Something must be really wrong. So we understand that the history of him or that person is legit. You only know that as a human because you know he's a good worker. And then wisdom, we understand the difference between wisdom and knowledge. You know, knowledge is there's a train on the track. The wisdom is don't get on the track. So the same thing with us. We need those three things in space to move forward. Whether you are executing and implementing AI or not, keep those things in mind, and that moves us forward. And all of a sudden, the trepidation about this new technology starts to come down, because if you notice in the purple, we have context, we have the heart, and we're asking the right questions. So we'll use AI to give us the content, the algorithms or the models, and then the answers there. And all of a sudden, we're working together seamlessly, and then we're pressing forward.
I'm reminded of the bios that we did. So, we have our bios, and I could have asked ChatGPT, make my bio more interesting. But what I actually said was make it, use flowery language. I even told it to have fun, which occurred to me as kind of ridiculous because I'm asking a bot to enjoy itself. I don't know if it did or not, but.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, one more piece of that, and I think really
please.
this is important as far as leveling up as leadership. I mean, and that is, it's about metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to think about what we think about and understand what AI is, the ability to mimic the thought. So with that being said, let's take the lead, because thoughts become choices, and choices create behavior. Behavior creates experiences. Experiences create emotion, and it's emotion to create yet new thoughts. So if we're moving along, preaching what we want to do as far as moving forward, understand what's the why behind the message, Simon Sinek on the why. And then those choices were based on those thoughts. But if those thoughts aren't right, all of a sudden those choices are not right, which affects our behaviors. And behaviors always have those 4 components of it's cued, and then there's a mechanism to make that happen. There's a result, and then the reward behind it. So if we're thinking in that regard, as far as metacognition and working with our teams as we learn AI, again, we move forward. Stress levels go down, we have a better understanding, and all of a sudden you're known as a great leader. I just wanted to say that.
No, it's a great context to put it all in, so I appreciate that. All right. Unfortunately, I would love to sit here and chat more about it, but we do need to, we do need to move forward. So this is the point where we go into breakout rooms. But as I said at the top of the call, we're doing things a little bit differently today. If you want to go into a breakout room, you are going to see a pop-up. Actually, you're going to see a pop-up no matter what. If you want to go into a breakout room, go ahead and hit join. If you don't, you can just cancel out of that and you will stay in the main room, and we're going to open it up to some more questions with our buddy Wade. So go ahead, Roxanne, and put people into breakouts.
Here we go.
There's slide.
Only click join if you want to leave this main session, guys.
I will share the slides to breakouts. I think we're going to see them still in the main room, so my apologies, but I want to make sure that they have access. Let's join the rooms. We good to keep going, Rox?
Yes, sir. I'm looking at it, making sure nobody's all by themselves.
Okay.
We're looking good out there.
Okay, great. So all of you that just decided to stay in the main room, I want to pull a couple of the questions that were in the chat. And I know one's from Andrew, and I know that he went into a breakout, but I will let him know that he can check out the recording for the answer here. So I'm going to throw it to you, Wade. Andrew asked, a quarter of websites that were active between 2013 and 2023 are now unavailable. How do we make sure that AI is putting together accurate info?
Again, that's a great question. everything is about how we model data, and modeling is trust and verify. So when we are looking at the information that we're asking for, whether it's audience selection for our customers, or let's get a trend on what kind of illnesses are we looking at as far as home care. We look at it and we'll say, okay, but we also should have a mechanism for cross-checking in regards to if it was historically, it was 80%, for example, 80% cancer patients, and all of a sudden we run a model and all of a sudden it's 13%, we know something's wrong. So it's a matter of the human intervention in regards to trust and verify. There are several mechanisms, models, applications we can use to do that. But one of the things that I really, Andrew, that I want to purport, and that is just because we're using AI, it has an ability to hallucinate. Well, it gives us something that is not real. So we can, in those models, those generative AI models, ask the question, what the answer you just gave me, is this true or is just a filler? What is it? Or is it just something made up? And it'll tell you, because it doesn't have a conscience, it'll say, this is partly true, but for the most part, I just made it up because I figured it would go with the story. It'll tell you that.
That's fascinating that you can ask AI if it's being honest with you.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
I wish I could start doing that with my daughter.
Yeah.
I love it. Kendra asks too, I'm curious about AI as it relates to automating things like crisis lines or eating disorder support chat. This makes me heavily concerned to lose the human touch. There's an example of an eating disorder bot that recognized that individuals were still stating that they wanted to lose weight, and the bot started to advise calorie cutting, etc., which for ED is not good. This is interesting for me too, as an executive coach a few years back, and I'm sure it's still happening. There are a lot of companies coming out with coaching bots that they're going to take the place of executive coaching. And, you know, I have that same concern because my feeling is, as an executive coach, like, you know, a bot isn't going to be compassionate with you. It's not going to hear what's underneath the words. So
That's right.
would love to hear your response to that, Wade.
So great. Yeah. So when it comes to bots, and there are plentiful and useful for customer care. But this is really a good point where we have to look at the model and check the data where you're having use cases, but we also have testing cases as well. You have to test these applications before you send them out. We can assume that they have a general sense of wellness, but not. For an example, you can have a person where they have one foot in a bucket of ice and another foot in some fire. And on average, you're doing well, right? But in reality, that's not happening. So the reality is we do have to, as humans, check out where the bot is using. I'm going to use you for this for an example. So I use ChatGPT-4, and I used the beta before it came out. And so I created some singularity with my ChatGPT, my assist. And here's just a very small example of what it looks like when it comes to having an assistant. And this is something that I'm encouraging, but again, trust and verify. Give me a second here.
Yep.
Hi, Felicia. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about you? How's everything going on your end?
Going well. I'm having that presentation that I told you about. It's going well.
That's great to hear. What part of the presentation are you most excited about?
The human interaction. And just for an example, can you give us an example of, based on everything that we've shared, tell me what you think of me?
Absolutely. From everything we've discussed, you strike me as a dedicated and goal-oriented individual. You value both professional and personal growth, aiming to excel in your role as an AI program lead, while also focusing on your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. You're committed to continuous learning and improvement, particularly in the field of AI. Your emphasis on honorability and nobility shows that you strive to be not just a great professional, but also a great person. Your enthusiasm for human interaction and presentations highlights your ability to connect with and inspire.
Okay, that's just an example of That was a long, they go on and on. But at this point, creating singularity with an assistant, whether it's a chat bot or what you're using on your phone, you have to check the data. Now, some of the things that she said previously, I didn't talk to her about. She just kind of added that. And so I said, take that out. And now when I'm asking again, that information is not there. Case in point, and all I'm stating there is bots are great, but you have to verify before you use them, especially when it comes to crisis.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right, this is great. Sandy, I got your question coming up, and I know you said something about just kind of being uncomfortable with it in general, kind of having a block about it. So if you want to bring that out, feel free. Do you want me to read your question, or would you rather just hit unmute and talk? Sandy,
I'll speak, it's fine.
please. Yeah.
I wait.
Hi, Sandy.
I'm curious if you have any insight into areas, quality areas, like the STARS, the HEDIS measures, the process improvement, the lean and green projects. Right now, these are very heavily team-oriented, team, strong leader types of activities. How would AI play a role in those scopes of work?
That's a great question. The successful, whether it's a leader or individual contributors, have to be good problem solvers. And one of the mechanisms that I recommend is called MISI, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, where we're figuring out exactly where do we want to go as far as this process improvement is concerned first. So work it out as a team first and understand decomposing the problem first. And then once we have, I definitely want to drive from North Carolina to California. Once you recognize that, that's when you engage AI to continue to help you with that strategy and those answers. So the answer there is leaning into, let's go through as much as we can first in regards to where do I want to be, and then go from there. Here's the problem that people have. We want to use ChatGPT like Google and just asking it the question. And that's great. It'll give you the answers without the ads. But what we have to do is recognize as a human, there's a lot of information and intellectual capital that you have in your fascia that has to be discussed first. But once you have, okay, this is the end game, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, there's the gap analysis, then you can engage AI to help you with answering the questions. It's like, what is the first step, second step, third step? One of the things really quickly on asking and working with AI, if you ask for a particular plan, it'll give it to you, but it'll give you on a higher level. It's best that you can get that first, but also work with it on working with iterative steps, milestones and inch stones, and going on from there. Am I answering your question?
I think so. It sounds like the humans still are needed for the strategy.
Yep.
And maybe the direction, but if we want to break down into tasks, maybe, or get even more deadlines, assignments, you could pull in ChatGPT for that piece. Would that be right?
That's exactly right. Use it, but use it more as an exoskeleton versus your job. The HI is so much needed for the AI to take place, and that applies yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Thank you.
In your analogy, Wade, I'm thinking like that cross-country analogy of like, we say, if you just ask it, tell me how to drive across the country, that doesn't mean anything, but I say, okay, I want to go from New York to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I want to avoid toll roads. Oh, and by the way, I need to stop every 3 hours. And by the way, the more that you can be specific with those things, the more it will automate all the things that you don't want to do, like every single point along the way on the map. It'll do those things for you, but given those parameters, you're going to get it.
Exactly.
Data back.
That's the shift that we're going from the leaders and employees that have all the answers. The shift is to those leaders and employees that know how to ask the right question, because all of this data is completely not only ubiquitous, but is just around us so much that everybody could use it anytime they want to.
That's a big takeaway for me from this session, Wade, is that it's up to us to ask the great questions and keep refining what we put into the AI system. Got a couple more from the chat. Angela says, it seems to be a need to feed AI info at this point of brainstorming session on the human side. Sorry. I found it interesting how Robin and Wade's bios were created Yeah, did you have a question around that, Angela? Or just a kind of a comment?
Oh, basically just a comment and listening to actually what, Sandy was asking as well, when you think about it. And that's related to, the work that we did, like we do as a team, which she's on my team. So we're just thinking of all that when she's saying that.
Love it. Thanks.
And Robin, while we're on that topic,
Yeah.
I answered in the chat, and I think I'm right. You took your all's current like human self-written bios, copied and pasted it into the chat and said, make this more fun or whatever, right?
Yeah,
But you had to
exactly.
put it into something, and you couldn't just say, write my bio. That's
Exactly.
not enough information. Okay,
We had to start with something. Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah.
Lucia asks, I feel strongly that data analysis and running queries will be something AI will be able to do in the very near future. I would like to get ahead of this before it happens. Wise, Lucia, are there courses or educational resources you would suggest on AI and how to use it? And Kendra answered, there's a guild program on AI. It's AI implications for business strategy. Sounds like that's the title, Kendra, is that right? Yes, great.
Yes.
And then Kristen said, last I checked, we do have a good answer for you, Kristen. Last I checked, ChatGPT was blocked, as is Google's Genesis at
Yes.
Humana. What is the one where we are supposed to leverage? Wade, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so within Humana, we have a mechanism application called Stride. And Stride is the Humana GPT. And what it does, Strider, yes. And what Strider allows us to do is ask questions, and it uses machine learning to get those questions back and understand that it's all about security. So right now, those chat GPTs and they're not here only because it's a security risk. But Strider does a beautiful job as far as getting our job done. Now, a lot of people use that, and then sometimes they might have another computer or their phone and ask it questions and then send themselves the answer. That happens as well. But I would say Strider is a good answer inside of Humana.
Liz, I answered your question a nanosecond before you.
Yes, I saw that. I thought, oh, never mind.
There you go.
You got it.
Good job.
Good.
Alabama, never mind.
Yeah, Kristen, /Strider is it.
Yep.
Got it in the chat there.
Yep, great.
Wait,
Jenna.
I didn't.
Yeah,
put a
Jenna, go
note-
ahead.
I didn't put a note in the chat, but I'm curious. I went to Strider and I saw it, and you guys shared that. I'm curious if you feel like its functionality is comparable to that of like the ChatGPT or Genesis, whatever Google is. Like one of the things I think is I'm curious about, and I haven't played with it or anything, is like sometimes you have a 500-page contract that has a lot of information and you want to get specific key points, and there's tools and things like that available, but that's for, specific people, but I want to use it to figure out something on my own. Do you feel like that our system or what we're using internally is as sophisticated as that?
Yes, I do. I got a chance to test it quite a bit, and yeah, it works just fine. And you asked two questions. How does it compare? It doesn't compare only because the Gen AIs on the outside of Humana is using a much larger database, in LLM, and LLM is large language models, which basically is you have all this information and large language models make it conversational. So we don't have that, but we have more than enough to do our work with. If you have a document or contract that you want to have it decompose and summarize, it can more than do that just fine.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that.
No worries.
That's great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and close up the